In modern life, few challenges test your composure and self-control as much as when a woman who showed interest in you suddenly starts to ignore you. The same person who enthusiastically replied to your messages, who smiled when she saw you, who seemed genuinely interested in every word you said, has now transformed into a wall of silence. Messages go unanswered, calls are rejected, and that space that was once filled with her presence has now become a disconcerting void. It is natural that this abrupt change awakens a storm of emotions within you. Confusion mixes with frustration, wounded pride blends with longing, and insecurity begins to question your own worth. In an almost instinctive impulse, you may find yourself tempted to insist, to send more messages, to call repeatedly, or even to show up unexpectedly to try to understand what happened. However, it is precisely at this critical moment that the teachings of Stoicism can become your greatest ally. This millennia-old philosophy, developed in ancient Greece and refined by figures like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, offers us a path to deal with life's adversities with dignity and wisdom. And believe me, few moments require as much wisdom as dealing with the silence of someone you value. Stoicism teaches us that true peace and happiness do not depend on external factors, but rather on our ability to maintain inner serenity regardless of circumstances. When we apply this principle to the situation of being ignored by a woman, the first and most important lesson is you need to retreat immediately. Retreating is not a sign of defeat or weakness. On the contrary, it is an affirmation of your self-worth. When you continue to insist with someone who has clearly decided to withdraw, you are sending a powerful message, not to her, but to yourself. You are saying that your time, your dignity, and your emotional well-being are less important than the attention you wish to receive. A true Stoic understands that he has no control over the actions or feelings of others. The only thing over which you have complete dominion is your own reactions, and when you choose to retreat, you are exercising that control in the most dignified way possible. Think of retreating as a form of self-protection. By continuing to pursue someone who does not show the same interest, you place yourself in a position of excessive vulnerability. Each unanswered message, each ignored attempt at contact, is like a small wound to your self-esteem. A man who respects himself knows when it is time to stop this self-flagellation. The philosopher Epictetus wrote, "People are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." When a woman ignores you, what really disturbs you is not the fact itself, but the interpretation you give to that fact. You may see it as personal rejection, as an indication of your worth as a man, or as proof that you are not worthy of attention. But these are just interpretations, not truths. A modern Stoic understands that the disinterest of one specific person does not define your worth. There are countless reasons why someone may withdraw, many of them completely disconnected from who you are or what you did. She may be going through personal problems. She may have rediscovered feelings for someone else, or she may simply have realized that you are not compatible. None of these reasons diminishes who you are. When you retreat, you are creating a space for your mind to calm down and for you to regain perspective. In the heat of rejection, it is easy to fall into the trap of thinking that this specific person was the only possible source of happiness or fulfillment. This is not only false, but also a form of self-deprecation. There are billions of people on this planet, and the possibilities for meaningful connections are practically endless. Furthermore, by retreating, you are respecting her decision. A truly self-assured man understands that genuine interest cannot be forced or coerced. If she has decided to withdraw, insisting would not only be futile, but would also demonstrate a lack of respect for the boundaries established. It is also important to understand that retreating is not a strategy to make her change her mind. I am not suggesting that you withdraw in the hope that this will make her miss you and come back. That would just be a more elaborate form of manipulation, completely contrary to the principles of Stoicism. Retreating must be genuine, based on respect for yourself and for her freedom to make her own choices. By retreating from a situation where you are being ignored, you are creating space for something even more important: self-improvement. Stoicism is not a passive philosophy that accepts fate with resignation. On the contrary, It is a philosophy of constant action aimed at personal development. The time and emotional energy that you would spend trying to regain the attention of someone who has decided to withdraw can be redirected to activities that truly contribute to your growth. Dedicate yourself to your hobbies, delve deeper into your studies, strengthen your body with regular exercise, nurture genuine friendships, develop new skills. Every minute invested in yourself is a step towards a fuller and more satisfying life. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, reminded us that most of what upsets us is trivial and insignificant, and this perfectly applies to the situation of being ignored. On the grand scale of your life, this moment is just a point, a passing episode that will soon be replaced by more meaningful experiences. When you choose to retreat and focus on yourself, you are sending a powerful message not only to the woman who ignored you, but to the universe as a whole. You are complete on your own. Your happiness and your worth do not depend on the validation or presence of a specific person in your life. This self-sufficiency is extremely attractive, not only to potential partners, but to everyone around you. There is a magnetic energy in someone who has found peace and satisfaction within themselves, who does not need to beg for attention or affection to feel complete. And here is a truth that many men ignore. By showing that you don't need her to be happy, you become much more interesting in her eyes. This is not a manipulation tactic, but rather a natural consequence of your personal evolution. People are naturally drawn to those who have a rich and satisfying life, regardless of whether they are in a relationship. Retreating also gives you the opportunity to assess the situation more clearly. In the heat of the moment, when we are emotionally invested, it is difficult to see things as they really are. It's like trying to see through fogged glass. But when you step away, when you create a healthy emotional distance, you begin to notice aspects that previously went unnoticed. Perhaps you realize that there were signs of disinterest that you ignored, or that the compatibility between you was not as strong as it initially seemed, or even that you were more involved with the idea of her, with an image you created yourself, than with the real person. This clarity is invaluable. It protects you from investing time and emotional energy in relationships that have no future. And more importantly, it helps you to recognize more easily in the future the people who are truly willing to build something meaningful with you. There is also an aspect of Stoicism that is often misunderstood. Acceptance of fate does not mean passive resignation. When Epictetus tells us to distinguish between what is and what is not under our control, he is not suggesting that we abandon all aspiration or desire. He is teaching us to direct our energies efficiently. Applying this to the situation of being ignored by a woman, you cannot control her feelings or actions, but you have complete control over how you respond to this situation. And the most dignified response, the one that most honors your own humanity, is to retreat with grace and focus on what you can control, your own growth and well-being. Retreating also gives you the opportunity to practice another fundamental Stoic virtue, gratitude. It may seem strange to feel gratitude when you are dealing with the pain of being ignored, but a closer look reveals many reasons to be grateful. Be grateful for having experienced intense feelings, even if they resulted in disappointment. Be grateful for the opportunity to practice self-control and strengthen your character. Be grateful for this experience, helping you to more clearly identify what you really want in a relationship. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "When you wake up in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This daily practice of gratitude is a powerful antidote to the resentment and bitterness that can arise when we feel rejected. And here is a truth that many men take a long time to learn. When you are truly at peace with yourself, when you have found satisfaction and purpose regardless of being in a relationship, you become much more capable of building genuine and healthy connections. The paradox is that the less you need a relationship to feel complete, the more prepared you are to have a truly enriching relationship. When you are not seeking a partner to fill a void in you, but rather to share the abundance that already exists in your life, the dynamic changes completely. It is also important to understand that retreating does not have to be permanent. If, after a period of distancing, there are clear signs that she is interested in re-establishing contact, you can choose to respond. but do so from a position of inner strength, not of desperate need. And if that contact never comes, if the silence becomes permanent, know that you are perfectly equipped to move on. Stoic philosophy teaches us that life is a constant flow of changes, and that our ability to adapt to these changes is what determines our inner peace. So when a woman ignores you, do this immediately. Retreat, not out of wounded pride, not as a tactic to make her change her mind, but as an act of respect for yourself and for her. Retreat to create space for your own growth. Retreat to regain clarity and perspective. Retreat because you understand that your inner peace is too valuable to be disturbed by circumstances that are outside of your control. This retreat is not an end, but a new beginning. It is an opportunity to rediscover your own strengths, to cultivate your passions, to strengthen ties with people who genuinely value your presence. It is a chance to build a life so rich and meaningful that regardless of who enters or leaves it, your center remains unshakable. Remember the words of Epictetus. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about these things. When you change your perspective on being ignored, transforming it from a personal rejection to an opportunity for growth, you completely reconfigure the experience. And perhaps the deepest lesson that Stoicism teaches us in this situation is the importance of self-discipline. The immediate reaction when we are ignored is to try to fill that silence with more words, more messages, more attempts at contact. Resisting this impulse requires self-discipline. Choosing to retreat when your whole being is screaming to act requires inner strength. But it is precisely this ability to act against immediate impulses, to choose the wisest response instead of the easiest, that defines a man of character. And each time you exercise this self-discipline, it strengthens, becoming more accessible the next times it is needed. The philosopher Musonius Rufus, Epictetus' teacher, said that just as athletes develop their bodies through repetitive exercises, we develop our moral strength and our character through repeated virtuous actions. Every time you choose to retreat with dignity, instead of pursuing with desperation, you are strengthening your character. It is also important to recognize that the pain of being ignored is real and valid. Stoicism does not ask us to deny our emotions or pretend that we are not suffering. Instead, it invites us to observe these emotions with a certain distance, recognizing them without being controlled by them. Allow yourself to feel the sadness, the confusion, perhaps even the anger that arises when someone chooses to withdraw. Observe these emotions as a scientist would observe a natural phenomenon, with curiosity and without judgment. And then, aware of these emotions but not defined by them, choose the action that best serves your growth and well-being. Another fundamental aspect of Stoicism that applies perfectly to this situation is the concept of amor fati, the love of fate. It is not about loving only the good parts of life, but about embracing every experience, including the painful ones, as a necessary part of the journey. When you are able to look at the experience of being ignored not as a tragedy, but as a necessary chapter in the book of your life, something fundamentally changes. You begin to realize that this experience, however uncomfortable it may be, is shaping you, refining you, preparing you for future experiences. Perhaps she entered your life not to stay, but to teach you something about yourself that you could not learn otherwise. Perhaps the purpose of this connection was not a lasting relationship, but a specific lesson you needed to learn. And here is a powerful reflection. What if this silence, this apparent rejection, is exactly what you needed at this moment in your life? What if it is the necessary catalyst to propel you in a direction of greater authenticity and self-discovery? Stoicism invites us to consider that every obstacle is, in fact, a disguised opportunity. Every difficulty contains within it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Her silence may be the space you needed to finally hear your own inner voice. It is also an opportunity to reevaluate what you really seek in a relationship. Often, we pursue people who are not aligned with our deepest values, simply because we confuse physical or initial chemistry with genuine compatibility. Use this retreat time to clarify your own values and what you really want in a partner. What qualities are truly important to you? What kind of relational dynamic makes you feel most alive and most authentic? What shared vision of life do you hope to build with someone. Having this clarity will not only help you attract more compatible people in the future, but will also give you the confidence to recognize when someone is not aligned with what you seek, allowing you to step away before investing time and emotional energy in a connection without a future. Retreating also gives you the opportunity to practice another fundamental Stoic virtue, moderation. In a world that often celebrates excess and intensity, moderation may seem old-fashioned, but there is profound wisdom in finding balance, the middle ground between extremes. When you are ignored, the tempting extremes are either to pursue obsessively or to completely cut off any possibility of future contact, perhaps even nurturing resentment. Stoic moderation suggests an intermediate path, retreat with dignity, without completely closing the door to a possible future reconciliation, but also without passively waiting for it to happen. It is a delicate balance, but it is in this balance that you find your greatest strength. It is not cold detachment nor desperate attachment, but a form of detached interest that honors both your dignity and her autonomy. The philosopher Seneca teaches us that most of what upsets us is trivial and light when seen from the point of view of eternity. When you put this experience of being ignored in the perspective of your whole life, you realize that it is just a moment, a point in the vast landscape of your existence. 5, 10, 20 years from now, this experience that now seems so intense will be just a memory, perhaps even one you will recall with a smile of gratitude for the lessons it provided. This long-term perspective is incredibly liberating. And finally, retreating gives you the opportunity to practice one of the highest virtues of Stoicism, wisdom. Wisdom to discern what is and what is not under your control. Wisdom to choose the most dignified response instead of the most impulsive. Wisdom to see beyond the surface of things and understand the deeper lessons contained in each experience. When you choose to retreat with dignity, you are demonstrating a wisdom that many men never achieve. You are showing that you understand that true strength is not in controlling others or external circumstances, but in maintaining the integrity of your own character, regardless of what happens around you. To put all this into practice, here are some concrete actions you can take when you realize you are being ignored. First, acknowledge your emotions without judging them. Feel what you need to feel, but do not let these emotions dictate your actions. Remember that between the stimulus, being ignored, and your response, there is a space. In that space lies your power to choose how to react. Next, consciously withdraw from the situation. Stop sending messages, calling, looking for her on social media. This withdrawal is not an act of hostility, but of respect for yourself and for her. Redirect your attention to activities that promote your personal growth. Intensify your physical workouts, delve deeper into your studies or work, cultivate your hobbies, strengthen your friendships. These are not distractions, but investments in building a rich and meaningful life. Reflect on what you have learned from this experience. What insights has it brought about yourself, about what you seek in a relationship, about patterns you may need to change? Use this reflection not to self-criticize but to grow. Practice gratitude daily. Even in moments of disappointment, there are always countless reasons to be grateful. This practice will gradually transform your perspective, helping you to see abundance instead of lack. Stay open to new connections. The fact that one specific person has chosen to withdraw does not mean that you are not worthy of love and attention. New people will enter your life, some just passing through, others to stay. Receive them with an open heart, but without desperation or neediness. And if eventually this person who ignored you decides to re-establish contact, assess the situation clearly before responding. Ask yourself, does this reconnection serve my growth and well-being? Or would it lead me back to a pattern that has already proven painful? The answer to these questions will guide your decision in a much wiser way than the immediate emotional impulse. Always remember the words of Marcus Aurelius, much of happiness depends on what happens in our minds, not in the external world. When you retreat with dignity and focus on building a meaningful life, regardless of who is or is not by your side, you are cultivating that mental space of peace and contentment that no one can take away from you. And here is perhaps the deepest truth that Stoicism has to offer us in this situation. When you learn to find peace and satisfaction within yourself, you will never again be hostage to another person's attention or approval. You become truly free. This inner freedom is the greatest power a man can possess. It is the foundation for healthy relationships, for decisions aligned with your deepest values, for a life lived with purpose and meaning. So, when a woman ignores you, see this not as a defeat, but as an invitation. An invitation to retreat with dignity, to strengthen your character, to build a life so rich and meaningful that it becomes a magnet for people who truly resonate with who you are. And in this process, you will discover a surprising truth. The ability to be okay alone is exactly what makes you capable of being truly present with another person. It is from your center of strength and inner contentment that your capacity to love generously and authentically is born. Be grateful for this opportunity for growth, however uncomfortable it may seem at the moment. Years later, you will look back and recognize that it was precisely in the moments when you had to retreat and trust in your own inner strength that you became the man you were destined to be. Her silence is not the end of your story. It is just the beginning of a new chapter, one that you write with wisdom, dignity, and an increasingly deeper understanding of your own worth. A chapter that, regardless of whether or not it includes this specific person, will be rich in learning, growth, and ultimately, in an inner peace that no one can disturb. Retreat, not with bitterness or resentment, but with the serenity of someone who understands that their worth does not depend on external validation. Retreat not to manipulate or punish, but to honor both your dignity and her autonomy. Retreat not as an end, but as the beginning of a deeper journey of self-knowledge and self-realization. And while you retreat, always remember the immortal words of Epictetus. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about these things. By transforming your view of this experience, from a rejection to an opportunity for growth, you transform your entire life. In the end, what really matters is not whether she returned to give you attention or not, but who you became in the process. And if you follow the Stoic path of retreating with dignity and focusing on your own development, I guarantee that you will become a man who not only attracts the right kind of people, but who, more importantly, is at peace with himself, regardless of external circumstances. This is the true victory. This is true freedom. And it is within your reach at the very moment you choose to retreat. Take a deep breath and say to yourself, "My worth does not depend on anyone's attention or approval. I am complete on my own. And from this place of completeness, I will build a life of meaning and purpose." From now on, every step you take will be from this solid foundation of self-knowledge and self-esteem, and there is no greater power than that. It is essential to understand that her silence can be, ironically, one of the best opportunities for you to rediscover your own inner voice. In the fast-paced world we live in, we rarely have moments of true introspection. We are constantly distracted by notifications, conversations, and commitments. When someone important withdraws, it creates a vacuum that, initially, we try to fill with anxious thoughts and desperate attempts to restore contact. But if you resist this initial impulse and embrace the space created, you will discover that this silence is fertile. In this space, you can begin to hear thoughts and intuitions that were previously muffled by the constant noise of communication. Perhaps you realize that there were aspects of the interaction that were not working for you, but that you ignored for fear of losing the connection. Perhaps you discover that your own desires and needs were being put on the back burner. Or even you may recognize repetitive patterns in your relationships that deserve deeper analysis. A valuable practice during this period of retreat is to keep a journal. Recording your thoughts, emotions, and insights not only helps you process them, but also creates a record that you can revisit later when the emotional intensity has diminished. This writing exercise is a concrete way to transform a painful experience into lasting wisdom. The Stoic philosopher Seneca had the habit of reviewing his day every night, reflecting on his actions and decisions. He wrote, "When the light is removed and my wife has become silent, aware of my habit, I examine my entire day and go back over my actions and words. I hide nothing from myself. I pass over nothing." This practice of honest self-analysis is particularly valuable when we are dealing with the emotional challenge of being ignored. Another dimension of retreat that deserves to be explored is how it affects your relationship with other people in your life. When we are deeply involved with someone, especially in the initial phases of intense attraction, we tend to direct much of our emotional energy and attention towards that person. Consequently, other important relationships, friendships, family, colleagues, may receive less from us. When you retreat from the situation where you are being ignored, you have the opportunity to redistribute this energy. Reconnect with friends who may have felt your absence. Dedicate more time to strengthening family ties. Invest in professional networking or mentorship. These connections not only enrich your life, but also provide perspective and emotional support during the overcoming process. An often overlooked aspect of retreating is its impact on physical well-being. The emotional stress of being ignored by someone we value can manifest physically. Muscle tension, sleep disturbances, changes in appetite, decreased immunity. By choosing to retreat consciously instead of remaining trapped in a cycle of anxiety and rejection, you allow your body to recover as well. Use this period to adopt or intensify practices that promote your physical well-being. The Stoics greatly valued the health of the body, not as an end in itself, but as a necessary support for the development of the mind and character. Regular exercise, balanced nutrition, adequate sleep, and relaxation techniques are not only beneficial for your physical health, but also strengthen your emotional resilience. Retreating also provides an excellent opportunity to review your long-term plans and goals. Often, when we are intensely focused on a potential relationship, we can lose sight of our broader goals or even unconsciously modify them to accommodate that connection. Take this moment to reconnect with your deepest aspirations. What mark do you want to leave on the world? What skills do you want to develop? What experiences do you want to live? This clarity of purpose not only gives you a direction during the retreat period, but also positions you to attract people who are genuinely aligned with the trajectory you envision for yourself. As Epictetus reminds us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. There is also a complementary perspective on retreating that is rarely discussed. It not only benefits you, but also the person who chose to withdraw. By respecting her silence, you demonstrate a higher form of consideration. You are communicating without words that you recognize her autonomy and her right to set boundaries. This respect for another's space is a concrete manifestation of the Stoic virtue of justice, the ability to treat others with fairness and consideration, even when it does not immediately serve our desires. This elevated attitude not only preserves the possibility of a future reconnection on healthier grounds, but also contributes to your growth as a human being. And here is an insight that few men fully understand. Retreating, when done with the right attitude, does not diminish your presence in her life, but transforms it. Instead of being an insistent presence that generates discomfort or irritation, you become a meaningful absence, a space that can, over time, be filled with curiosity or even longing. The psychologist Carl Jung spoke about how absence can, paradoxically, intensify someone's psychological presence. When you retreat with dignity, you are not simply disappearing from her consciousness, but changing the way your image is perceived and processed. It is also important to understand that retreating, like any Stoic practice, is not something you do once and it is resolved. It is a continuous commitment, a decision that needs to be renewed daily. There will be moments, perhaps when you feel particularly lonely, or when you see a picture of her on social media, or when something important happens in your life that you would like to share, when the impulse to re-establish contact will be strong. In these critical moments, remember the original reason for your retreat: respect for yourself and recognition of your own worth. Ask yourself, is giving in to this impulse now aligned with my deepest values? Does it serve my growth and well-being? Or would it simply alleviate a temporary discomfort at the expense of my dignity? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Not as an exercise in pessimism, but as a mental preparation to face the challenges of the day with equanimity. Similarly, Recognize in advance that there will be moments of temptation and weakness, and prepare yourself to face them with resolution. Another fundamental aspect of retreating is understanding that it is not a denial of vulnerability, but a higher expression of it. True vulnerability is not in repeatedly exposing your heart to someone who has chosen to withdraw, but in having the courage to remain open to life's possibilities, even after the experience of rejection. Many men confuse persistence with vulnerability. They believe that insisting, even in the face of clear signs of disinterest, is a demonstration of emotional courage. In fact, this persistence often serves as a shield against true vulnerability. The willingness to accept reality as it is, not as we would like it to be, and move on. True vulnerability is in saying to yourself, I value my emotional integrity so much that I am willing to step away from something I deeply desire, but that is not serving my growth and well-being. It is in recognizing that yes, rejection hurts, but that pain does not define who you are or what you deserve. Finally, it is important to understand that retreating, when practiced according to Stoic principles, is never motivated by wounded pride or the desire for retaliation. It is not a passive-aggressive way of punishing the other person for her silence, but a conscious decision based on self-love and mutual respect. The Stoic philosopher Heracles developed the concept of circles of concern, the idea that our care and attention should extend in concentric circles, starting with ourselves, then our family, our friends, our community, and finally, all of humanity. He argued that we first need to be well with ourselves in order to be truly useful to others. When you retreat from a situation where you are being ignored, you are honoring this first circle of care. You are recognizing that your inner peace and emotional well-being are the foundation upon which all your other relationships and contributions are built. And in doing so, paradoxically, you become more capable of loving genuinely, not in a dependent or needy way, but from an inner fullness that naturally overflows to others. You become a man who offers love not because he desperately needs to receive it back, but because giving has become a natural expression of his being. This is the deepest transformation that retreating can catalyze. The evolution from a man who seeks external validation to a man who has found his center of gravity within himself. A man who not only survives silence and rejection, but transmutes them into opportunities for growth and self-discovery. Always remember, retreating is not giving up. It is moving forward in a different direction. It is walking towards a stronger, more centered, and more authentic version of yourself. And in the course of this journey, you will discover that the silence that initially seemed like a loss has revealed itself, in fact, to be the catalyst for gains much greater than you could imagine.